Hello, my name is Grace Bushell. This is a recording of me answering 10 questions which have been set by the Network Rail representatives for the virtual Insights Career Insights Summer School through Newcastle University, and I shall be answering these questions in as much detail as I can give, and as much context I can give as well. So here we go. So question 1 was, tell us about a time when you've needed to ensure somebody understood a complicated message. So while I was at university, obviously before the COVID-19 pandemic struck, I used to carry out volunteering outside of university. It was actually organised through university, like through the Students' Union, but I chose to volunteer with an organisation called the Green Schools Project. And this involved me going to a school each week and working with a set of pupils and developing sustainable techniques around school, and kind of asking them to consider how they can live their lives in a more eco-friendly way, without overwhelming them with issues surrounding climate change and global warming. So this is where the complex message comes in. So when I initially went to the school, I had to kind of communicate to them how serious the problems associated with climate change are. But obviously I didn't want to scare them or overwhelm them or make them feel powerless in the situation. I wanted to actually encourage them and motivate them rather than overwhelm and scare them. So in order to do this, through my training with the Green Schools Project, I was able to access certain video resources as well as PowerPoints and like other kind of online resources remotely. And so I looked at these, I adapted them, and I used kind of more interactive methods. So this would be more suitable for like everyone's learning needs. I felt this was important to ensure that all the students I'd be working with were engaged in all the tasks and games and activities we would be completing. So I did this by creating my own PowerPoints based on the ones that I had already had access to, and this made me more aware of like kind of communication techniques and how not to overwhelm the children. So instead of saying kind of climate change is a really scary problem that's never going to go away no matter what we do, I sort of said this is a really big problem, but there are definitely things that we can do as a community to combat it. And I think this was really effective because the students were really excited to meet me when I first met them. Like when I initially met them, like even before I'd met them, they were really excited to just like get on with these projects. And through the different like tasks and activities that we were doing, they seemed really engaged all the way through. We had no problems with like their concentration in the classroom, and like they were just really like motivated, and you could tell that they definitely, although they were kind of apprehensive about like these major global problems, in the way that we presented it to them, like manageably, like there are things that they can do at their own level of school community and like in their local community outside of school. They were really excited to get going with it. So this was really, I found this really effective, and I used certain terms to paraphrase things rather than actually completely scaring them and making them really worried all the time. So yeah, that's what I did with that. So question 2, oh sorry, how did I check the other person answered? So the students, I regularly asked them to reflect on what we'd done in the sessions at the school, and this was really useful because it made me like I was able to then monitor their progress and how well they were doing with the tasks they've been set, and also like longer term how they were actually monitoring their own projects within the school. And I think that they definitely understood the message we were communicating to them about climate change, but also about the local effects they can have as a group and individuals as well. So question 2 was, describe a time you persuaded someone to change their views or behaviour. So I'm currently in my first year of university, we'll just kind of come to an end of that now, as an undergraduate, and so with this I didn't really think of any sort of situations that I had been in the past year, but previous to this, during my time in sixth form, I was a deputy head girl as part of the student senior leadership team, and as part of this we got opportunities to complete different projects. So I decided to go away on a World Challenge expedition, and I really like, and as part of my work as deputy head girl, we always had to consider like minimising waste and like our impact on the environment with all the activities we'd done around the school. So then when I'd optionally chosen to go on this World Challenge expedition organised through the school within different years, I used the skills that I'd learnt from being deputy head girl, like my kind of persuasive skills and like gentle methods of persuasion and kind of convincing other people based on my own experiences, to complete an environmental related project rather than a project relating to like the building of a school. So obviously I addressed the issues at hand. So I said to them, there's obviously long-term benefits to doing both projects within the school. Obviously this is providing an education environment for children who may not necessarily have already had access to one. But with the environmental project, it involved longer term kind of sustainability of the area we would be working with, well, the communities and the people obviously living there and other organisations that have their businesses there. This was out in Madagascar. So I said to them, I just said like, and based on my previous experiences of going to Vietnam on another one of these projects, it was very, very hot, and I knew that Madagascar would also be a very hot climate. And it became really hard for us after about maybe day 3 or 4 of working on this project to like kind of carry on like physically, because obviously we had acclimatised a little bit to the temperature by this point, but it was still really, really tough for us obviously as we weren't used to this sort of environment. But we did the best obviously we could. But then, so I said basically, like, based on my previous experiences in this sort of hot, uncomfortable, strenuous environment, I believe we should do the environmental project because it's going to have longer term benefits for like the planet and like the sustainability of that particular local area, but also on a wider scale, the plantations we were working with were mangroves, and these actually absorb up to 50% more carbon than other trees. So I thought that by promoting this kind of information about what the project involved, this would ensure that people in my group were going to like move over towards the environmental project rather than the educational project. And actually this was successful, and we chose to go out and do this project, and with my leadership skills and organisational skills I'd also gained from being on the student senior leadership team, I was able to successfully conduct this project and actually take quite an active role within the group, as well as suggesting new ideas as how we could help these local communities. So yeah, that was really worthwhile, and I thoroughly enjoyed both times I went away. So question 3 was, tell us about a time you've worked hard to meet a deadline. So when I was part of the student senior leadership team at secondary school in the sixth form, we chose to organise the school's charity week. This was kind of one of our main duties, and it was assigned to us, and then we had to choose within that which role we would take on. So as somebody who is quite open to like communicating with people who may not necessarily I come into contact with every day at the school, and also I feel as though as quite an approach, I am quite an approachable person. So I decided to take on the role of organising every single form tutor like group event within my school. So this involved a lot of like organisation, and I had to have things done by a certain point, otherwise the events were just not going to take place in the way that we needed them to. And obviously with the idea of Charity Week, we had to ensure that we were meeting these deadlines because we wanted to raise as much money as possible for the charities that we had chosen. So I met these deadlines by writing down a whole list of to-do tasks, like breaking it right down, because that was how I kind of comprehended what I had to do at the time. So I also was given a load of guidance about like kind of healthy eating in schools, because some of the events were really mainly based around like cake sales, sweet sales, all that sort of thing, like sweet raffles. And I was only actually allowed to allow 2 of these events to go on per day. So we have break time and lunchtime events. So within that, there only was allowed 2 each day of these like kind of cake sales, slightly unhealthier eating events to go on. So bearing this in mind, I knew I was going to face some kind of backlash, but with the deadlines that I'd set, I managed to send out a form, like an application form for all the tutor groups to fill in about which stalls they wanted to run. I gave everyone 3 options, like their first option, a backup option, and then another option in case the first 2 wouldn't be acceptable. I got all of those in by a certain time. I then reviewed all of them. I said to which forms, which choices they'd all been given, and actually I didn't have to decline anyone the option of an event because there had been some really like new innovative ideas that came out this year. That year we did it, so it was actually really, really helpful that I had set these mini deadlines for myself, and I actually ended up having more time to sort out the logistics of each event and assist any forms that needed further kind of help with whatever aspect of their event that might be, like my health and safety, the wastage after an event, like the rubbish pickup and that sort of thing. So with these smaller deadlines that I had set myself to achieve the overall deadline for the start of the charity week itself, just before the October half term, I was successful in this, and I felt as though the extra effort that I had put in to do this really helped me to meet this goal. So number 4, describe a time it's been important to be organised. So at university, I decided to get stuck in my first year and actually become an EDI officer. So EDI is Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. And I did this because I felt as though there were certain issues that we'd been described, like that had been described to us around geography, politics, sociology, as well as like not just my academic school, but around the university and in the wider community of Newcastle that I felt needed kind of addressing, and I wished to take a more active role and actually voice the opinions of other students and staff members if they had come to me about an issue, and do this in a way which was organised and obviously not like just all over the place, because that's not, I mean, in my opinion, effective. So what I did was we had some initial meetings, and I, in my first role, and I introduced myself and what I was doing, and my contact details were made available to a lot of people in case they wanted to bring up a particular issue with me. So then I did start to receive some emails, and I had some communication from fellow students in lectures and other seminar classes and things like that. And I then have a big notebook, and I wrote this all down, and I kind of grouped different issues together and what might be possible issues that other people hadn't really talked about but that could be linked to what they'd said. And so I did all this, and then each time I took this notebook to my meetings, and this was a really useful way for me to kind of address these issues in a certain order as obviously priority. Like, I mean, I didn't talk throughout the whole entire meeting because there were lots of things that had to be discussed and got through, such as like the industrial action that took place and other issues surrounding, like there was like a diversity week and things like that. So we had to get things organised, as well as obviously bringing up long term issues. But I believe that the way I set this out and the way I organised my own system of communication, this was really effective because it enabled me to go to the meetings each month and the other slightly more regular meetings, the bigger meetings, and actually feed this back to main members of staff who could get something changed. And by, instead of bringing together a load of little issues, I actually had quite major points that I could then feed back to them instead of it kind of dragging out for a longer time. And I felt as though this was an effective result because we got a lot of these issues covered and we had some solutions immediately implemented. And this was just through lots of different groups communicating with each other, but that was really, really effective in my opinion. So yes, so moving on, it was number 5. So tell us about a time you've needed to analyse some information. Okay, so with my volunteering, I was, as I was discussing earlier, I was assigned these resources that have been made available to me through the Green Schools project, and then I obviously had to like look at these and take specific parts out of them that I could then adapt for the children I was working with at the time. So I had to actually consider, okay, what are these? Obviously, I'm not from Newcastle, as you can probably tell from my accent, but I had to then look up a lot of information about the local areas and like the kind of communities these people lived in, their socio-economic circumstances, the environmental aspects of their school, as well as local areas surrounding the school and Newcastle. And what I did was I used the PowerPoints that I've been given and then adapted them to fit, like, so those people could more relate to them, like in a way that they would actually think, oh yeah, like that's really specific to me. I know I can do this. What sort of things can I take from this, and how can I develop this even further? So I had to really analyse the resources that I'd already been given to then make them more effective and more targeted towards the pupils I was working with and the teachers at the time as well as the actual school community I was working with as well, because it wasn't just one teacher, it was a whole group of people that had to work together to actually get these changes implemented within the school. So yes, I felt I was quite effective in doing this because in the end, with the projects we decided to do, with I decided to do with the group, they were instantly implemented. Like the day after, I found out that they'd already made a big notebook and they'd already started these like competitions as to who can be the best at switching lights off in classrooms and things like that. Um, so yes, and like I just felt this was really quick way for me to, instead of presenting just the resources I've been given, like actually creating my own from the things I was what I was given. This was just really effective because the changes that came of it were so instantaneous, and like already impacts were being made around the school from the short weeks I've been working, like volunteering there, which were really obvious to see. So yes, I believe that my analysis of this initial information to then convert it into something more targeted was very useful, and I think all the pupils have had really good time so far, so I'm really happy about that. So question number 6 was, describe the time you've needed to make a decision at work. So I don't actually have a part-time job, and I have never actually had any paid employment, but I have completed lots of volunteering activities and got involved in other projects, and like I've been on World Challenge expeditions and completed work abroad, a voluntary work abroad as well. But so this but then from these I couldn't really think of a time where I'd had to make a really kind of major decision. So then I went back to my time at secondary school, and this again relates to when I was deputy head girl for the student senior leadership team. So I um I made I was given these guidelines about health and safety eating at schools. So this was given to me by more senior members of staff, and initially I went to them with a question saying, well, how do you think would be best to respond to forms that really want to do a bake sale if this arose? But then luckily in the end it didn't. But like I needed to have some sort of management technique as to make these sort of decisions. So in the end, I obviously had to just explain that with the health and safety eating guidelines around healthy eating in schools, I wasn't allowed to allow any more than 2 events per day. And then in some cases, I did have to decide that some forms couldn't do bake sales because there were too many that had applied for the set to do them on the same day. And obviously, luckily, everyone had backup options to their events. And in the end, I was actually praised for my communication skills between myself, other members of the senior leadership team, like the student senior leadership team, and then other senior members of staff, who said that I'd utilised the email system really effectively to get word around about which forms were allowed to do which events. So I feel as though this was a very effective outcome because based on the decisions I had to make regarding the healthier eating options surrounding the events, this ended up being effective because luckily there were no arguments or disputes about the decisions I had made. And yes, so I had to take these decisions in the light of the strict guidelines that I've been given. And I felt as though this was overall successful because every form ran an event and it was really good. But thinking actually about another time that I had to make a decision, so I had to, when I was away in Madagascar, we had to make a decision as a group which trek route to go on. So we were actually working with a member of staff who had some quite significant health issues, like physical health conditions, that were not going to allow her to walk certain routes of our trek that we'd gone on as a team. So I sat down with the team and we all discussed kind of the best possible options, and as well as the fact that other members of our team were feeling unwell, we took a decision to change our trek route. And then in my part of it, I basically encouraged this meeting to start because I felt as though there wasn't a lot of communication going on between people and people were kind of a bit confused as to where to go next. So I held a group meeting after dinner one night with the group while we were on this World Challenge trip, and I said I feel as though it's important for us to talk about this as a group and make a decision based on the requirements and accessibility of everybody. So in the end, I made some contributions towards this meeting and facilitated the engagement between our trek leaders, people who were helping us on the expedition, as well as people who were in the local community around us. And then we decided to change our route and make it more accessible for everyone. And this was in the end successful because everyone had a really good time despite some illnesses within the group, and I felt as though my initial decision to have this meeting was effective because everyone enjoyed the trip and the trek as part of the trip, and it was a really good time. So yes. So then number 7 was tell us about a time it has been important to follow rules or procedures. So through my Green Schools project volunteering, I was asked to help volunteer at a conference in London. This was completely optional, but I decided to take it on because, again, I wanted to take an active role, an active position, and make a difference within this kind of environmental sustainability community, as well as have the opportunity to network with other people who are in the same position as me, and work alongside the organisation to improve the sustainability and educational, environmental education within schools. So this is all around the UK, but the event was held in London. So I was assigned some volunteering duties during the day, and it was quite a major event because it was a compilation of a lot of different people coming together to share ideas and run workshops. So I had to greet all the event attendees, and there were a lot of people. But then I also had to inform them that there were limited bookings for each workshop that was running on this day. I had to be polite, but I had to be firm with these people because I had been given guidance from somebody higher up than me in order to do this. And then if they had further questions, I directed them to this person who was guiding me on the day. And I felt this was effective because it was really important for me to follow these procedures, because obviously there was a maximum amount of people who could attend each workshop for a reason, like health and safety guidelines. The workshop had only been designed for a certain amount of people. There were some other aspects that I was told about as well, regarding the space that was being used and in accordance with the Natural History Museum, which is where this event was held. So then luckily I did not face a lot of backlash from this. There were a couple of people who were very confused, and I directed them over to the more senior person who was helping to run the event. But obviously I had to follow these rules that I'd been given, because I couldn't just say, oh, you can attend this event and have 50 bookings for one workshop and then none on another. So overall I felt as though I was effective in this because I did address the matter quite quickly, and I ensured that each workshop and tour had a sufficient amount of people on it, and everyone seemed pretty happy with that. So yeah, I felt as though overall it was successful, the role I played on the day, at this point in the day. So question 8 was describe a time when you've needed to speak out about something you've disagreed with at work. So again, I have never had a job, a paid job, but I then had to look for other examples of where this has happened. So with my Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Officer role at university, we have a lot of meetings, as I mentioned earlier. So we had one meeting regarding kind of formal / informal procedures for students and staff members to follow according to making official complaints about incidents or being involved in incidents throughout their time at university. And I was asked as a student how I'd feel about being given another leaflet or informational poster about all the different rules and guidelines about what how to follow them around university, and then also whether we should make complaints procedures more official or have slightly more informal procedures, and then be given an information leaflet about how to make these complaints should these situations arise. So personally, I had to voice my opinion that I disagreed with being given even more leaflets or long letters of guidance by the university at the start of Freshers Week and the induction week, because as going through this myself, having this experience, I felt very, very overwhelmed by leaflets. All of this information we were suddenly bombarded. I felt we were bombarded with at the start of induction week. I know, obviously, I understand that it's very important to be given this information in a structured way, but I felt as though it was so detailed. I didn't even I couldn't even take it all in at the time, and I had to be in my room really going over what we'd been given for a lot of extra hours, because I didn't really understand it all, and then I had to ask some further questions to members of staff, which was amazing that they were available to help. But I felt as though complaints procedure leaflets I didn't really think were very necessary at the time, Obviously, I know that there needs to be somewhere to access this information for students and staff. It's very, very important that they know where to go to make a complaint or to seek advice about something. But I then also raised the issue that I felt as though there were so many different avenues, like channels to go down, because I did experience some issues myself, not directly with other students, but like personal issues that affected my first year at university. But then I had to kind of work out which person would be best to go to for each different issue, and this was very overwhelming for me. So, I mean, obviously, I would have liked a bit of a clearer set of guidelines or rules, but I feel like as though if this was available online to students, any time, like maybe a PowerPoint with it or something on the website, an area of the website, or both, or like emails being sent, I felt as though this would have been more effective than the possibility of them introducing like another leaflet to be given out at the start of Freshers Week, or another PowerPoint to be added about it. Because honestly, with all the the central police induction, as well as our geography like subject induction, like course induction, I felt really overwhelmed by the end of the week and had to really take it easy because I've just felt really bombarded by this new information. Obviously, it was important to have it and have it given to us, but perhaps a different structure would have been a bit more effective. So I voiced this carefully and politely because I understand the importance of being professional and polite when communicating with members of staff and other students at the university. But I just had to make it very clear about my personal opinion on this, as this is what they wanted to hear. So I felt as though this was effective because in the end they decided to have another review, a further review of these things they were considering to implement, as well as taking on board my advice that I felt particularly overwhelmed as a student at the start of Freshers Week and the induction at the end of the induction week as well, with all the different pieces of booklets and things of information we were given about university life and the course as well. So number 9 was tell us about a time you've needed to work at a particularly fast pace. So going back to the event I mentioned earlier about the London Environmental Education Forum conference that was held in London just earlier this year, I had to actually take on board this very fast-paced environment very, very quickly. I mean, we were given guidance just before the event about what we kind of need to do and the sort of environment we'd be working in and what we'd need to prepare for. But I wasn't quite prepared. I don't feel like I was fully prepared for the whole day. So until obviously I got there, which is understandable. But yeah, so I felt the guidance was very good, but it was extremely fast paced, and I didn't realise how many people were going to be turning up. So so with this event, I had to ensure that all the guests, once they'd been greeted, they moved into another room because otherwise there'd be far too many people crowding around in one room. So I used my politeness with my communication skills to inform people that, okay, thank you for coming, please could you sign up to a workshop and then move along into the next room, or go and create a name badge for the day and things like that. So I basically had to ensure the smoothest possible transition between each part of the morning of the event. And this was quite a tough challenge because some people didn't really understand my directions, and I felt as though that maybe I wasn't effective there with being clear enough. But by about an hour or so into the start of the event, each person was pretty much clear on where they had to go and what they had to do next after signing up these workshops. So then it was a fast-paced environment, and I did have certain people come up to me and ask me certain questions that I didn't have answers to because I was just a volunteer at the day. I wasn't an expert or anything like that. So I then had to kind of direct them over to somebody that did know the answers. And although this was on the whole quite a stressful event, but I ensured that I stayed calm, building on my previous experiences from working in kind of large event environments and as well as organising things to deadlines. That I just kind of didn't panic over things I didn't really have control over, and I just kind of stayed as calm as possible by taking each person as they came along and not getting all flustered and things like that. I also did have a couple of breaks out as well while I went and had a drink outside in case I felt really panicky. But overall, I felt as though I managed this very well because the event ran smoothly and the greeting and then moving on to each other stage of the day went really, really well. And at the end of the day, I was actually praised by the person who was guiding me in this, that I had worked really, really hard and gone above and beyond what my duties were. And this was really encouraging for me. because they then said that they would refund my travel expenses that I'd had to attend this event, and that meant that really meant a lot to me. I was really appreciative of that, because I knew that they didn't have to do that for me, and I felt as though like me giving up my time to go and volunteer with them at this really big kind of fast-paced event in London, I'd done something. I'd actually made a difference, and that was noticed, and that just really meant a lot to me. Um, so I didn't really have to kind of drop any tasks as such to meet these like fast paced requirements, but I did have to ensure that I stayed calm and didn't let the like kind of atmosphere of the event overwhelm me. Um, so yeah, I felt as though I did do a good job of this, and especially with how the event ran smoothly overall, and that I was spoken to at the end of the day about how smoothly it went, and that I'd gone above and beyond my duties. I felt very proud of myself for this. So yes, on the whole, very good. Um, so yes, and number 10, the final question. Tell us about a situation within the workplace where you have observed a potential safety issue, and how did you rectify the situation? So, again, I have never been like within like an official workplace. I have done some work experience, and I've done volunteering and did various volunteering abroad aspects. But I so during my time as deputy head girl at secondary school, I reflected on an event I've been to, that I know that I'd actually helped organise, and that I'd obviously attended to help run the event. So there was an event which was for parents only of the school, which was kind of, I think it was about informing them of the GCSE options for their children. So a potential safety thing which we'd all been briefed about, and that I'd also picked up before with this briefing, was about parents turning up with children and then being turned away again. And unfortunately, this did happen. So we had a number of parents who came to the school with their children, and unfortunately, some of them were single parents too. So they then had the problem, unfortunately, of like childcare, organising childcare really last minute. So in some of these cases, we could not allow them to, like the teachers could not allow them to have their children sat in the car, because this is obviously a major safety hazard. Like if the child was alone in the car while the parent attended the event, and then so there were a lot of safeguarding and other safety issues around this. So then I had to direct these parents over to more senior members of staff in order to sort something out. So then a potential outcome to ensure this wouldn't happen again, I considered would be like sending a text message or email reminder to parents on the day saying, please don't bring your child with you to this event, in a polite way, of course, professional method, because obviously there's certain techniques that have to be followed with this, and it was a bit nerve wracking because on the day we did have quite a few parents turn up with children, and then we then had to kind of either turn parents away or get something sorted with them. But I also considered having a room where children could be supervised by another member of staff. Obviously, this would then increase the difficulty surrounding the event with the staff member as well, depending on their situation. But I thought maybe having a room with the children whose parents couldn't have arranged alternative childcare options for the event, that might have been a bit more effective. But also a text message or email reminder would have also probably done the job. So that was some possible solutions that I came up with. But obviously we had to overcome these safety issues on the day, and I felt as though by me working with the actual members of staff and other members of the senior leadership team, we overcame these issues very quickly and effectively. So then we did just suggest as a team to the school that those were some potential ideas. I also pitched an idea personally to some of the people who'd attended on the day, on the evening, and they thought that was very good, and then they appreciated our ideas a lot. And I said that I had to handle a lost parent as well on this particular occasion, and they said I was praised for that, because this parent obviously got very lost within the school. They didn't really know the layout of the school very well, and they got very lost. And I said, if you just like to follow me this way, I'll direct you back to where we need to go. And that also could have been a potential safety issue, because if the parent had become really lost within the school, they may not have known what to do next. So we then mitigated that by directing them back to where they needed to be, and everything ran smoothly from there on. So overall, I thought that was a very effective time that I'd overcome potential safety issues within a professional environment, although it was not a workplace. Um, so yes, in conclusion, I felt as though I'd used my communication skills as well as a bit of common sense, but I'd used certain skills that I picked up from experiencing other events from different, like both attending and helping to run other events in order to overcome these particular safety situations on the evening, and on the other time as well, where we'd had a parent bring a child with the on this particular evening where we had a parent bring the child to school when that was not what the event was about. So yeah, overall I thought I worked very effectively in these situations to overcome the safety issues that came up on the evening. I believe this is the end of the interview questions set by Network Rail. I don't really have anything else to add. I think if I do think of any questions, I will email Sarah and then ask her to ask the questions to the representatives. Thank you very much for this, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity you've given me and the Virtual Insight Summer School careers through the Newcastle University Career Service. I have found very worthwhile, and I'm really lucky. I feel very grateful to have participated in this experience. So thank you.